So hang tight. If anyone wants to speak, we do have a sign-up sheet up front. The Subcommittee of Education. We're going to go ahead and get started. I've asked Floor Leader Wade if he would open us up in a quick word of prayer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Bless this committee and its members and the consideration of appropriate policy that will impact schools, our communities, and the benefit of children, not adults, but children. We thank you for all these things. Guide us in our decisions. And all this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Floor Leader. With that, I'd like to introduce a man who needs no introduction, Chairman Hatchett, to present to us House Bill 504. And Chairman, I'm reading off of LC 339456S, if that's what you got. Good.
That's what I got too. Hey, right, yeah.
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Hilton. So this bill, this is the second time or second version I've introduced this. The first time I introduced something similar in 2014 when I was a floor leader, and the governor at the time said you can introduce it. And that was the extent it went. But I passed a handout to y'all to just compare the Dublin City Schools to the counties around it and the county in which Dublin City resides, and it shows the glaring amount of per student QBE funds that the city of Dublin is lacking in. And a lot of that from their calculations and their discussions is because the city does not at this time get any QBE funds or getting equalization funds. And I'm not an expert in the QBE formula at all, but they have asked me repeatedly, and I am trying to follow through with that, to remove the Freeport exemption involvement in the equalization, the way equalization is calculated. And the main reason for that is that the Freeport exemption is approved at the county level, and the city has no involvement and can't really do anything about it. I guess they could fight it, but it's kind of hard to fight your own county in doing that. And I personally agree with Freeport, and I don't think they have any problem with the Freeport exemption, but it causes them issues with something, and they have no control over it. So what they have asked me, and what in discussion with our House Budget Office, and this bill is created to remove the Freeport exemption, the level 1 Freeport exemption, which is the Freeport exemption on inventory like in warehouses and in factories. It does not include inventory that would be in a retail establishment or other places. That's the classification of this Freeport. Most of your counties have Freeport exemption, so hopefully this would help the city of Dublin gain equalization. It would probably be a couple of years before we would even know if that happens, but that's the reason that I'm doing it, and that's what this bill would do. And I'll try to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that explanation there. I will open it up to the committee. I know we've got a few members that have just sat down to any questions they might have. Mr. Floor Leader, I'll point to you. I know you've had some experience with this.
I appreciate the gentleman bringing the bill, and I'm definitely sympathetic to that situation. Just want to make sure I'm clearly watching this and looking at this as to if this were to happen, do you know what the net benefit is going to do to, or the reduction of that fair share piece, or what will the benefit do? Will it increase it from the 5176 per student QBE to a certain number? Do you have an estimation?
We do not at this time.
Okay.
So
You just know that it will.
And it'll probably take a couple of years before it actually, because I know it in the come on my brain in the calculation of equalization, it runs like 2 years behind because they've got to get with the revenue department. And,
okay.
But
you are pretty much convinced that it will increase to some material amount
to some degree.
Okay, but it definitely would not inadvertently decrease it in any manner.
No,
Okay,
I
don't see how it would either, but
well,
just want to make sure.
If it does, I'll probably be back.
Probably quickly, right? Yeah, and I'll share this with the committee, just as kind of in support of this. I live in a community in my district, and I'm sure Chairman Irwin has experienced this as a former superintendent. Definitely supportive of Local 5 Mill, trying to help parts of our state. There's some unintended consequences given the fact that there are some local as well as statewide exemptions in communities in which your gross tax digest is the number to which a 5 mill is calculated. And then the exemptions that you have are dollars that local system, that local tax commissioner never collects. And so the net recipient, the net amount that we collect in our community ends up equating to, for example, one of my schools, it's actually as if we have a 6 mil because of the exemptions. So those exemptions end up putting us in a situation where we actually give out a percentage of what we collect that would equate to 6 mils versus 5 mils because of that exemption calculation. So I hope I can work with the chairman on trying to true up those kinds of anomalies across the state, but I'm supportive of the bill, and I think that I look forward to hopefully you getting some information from your community that can extrapolate a number just so you know the benefit that you're providing to them. But I don't have any other questions. I think it's a pretty good bill, and I'm happy to offer a motion at the appropriate time until all questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floor Leader. Looks like we got one other question. Mr. Chairman, Chairman Irwin with a question.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this bill. I heard you say about equalization and how this bill, obviously, looking at this Freeport exemption, going to have the biggest impact on equalization, but it will also have an impact on all systems, correct?
Yes.
All the way across, because everybody will be offered this.
Right.
But it will have the largest impact on equalization.
Yes.
And to a positive effect for those systems that receive it, from what I understand. Is that correct?
I hope.
Mm-hmm. I got you. Well, good. Thank you. Good bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I don't see any other questions on the board for you. I will entertain a motion to pass.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that House Bill 504, and I want to make sure we're all reading from the same LC, just to confirm, LC 339456S.
That is correct.
And that's the motion to pass.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All against, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank y'all.
We're going to stand at ease just a second. We're waiting for our next bill author to arrive to present her bill. Talk amongst yourselves.
sprawl is there's a couple trees still left up there. But it does sprawl. It's pushing 1,000,000 people now. Is it? So, that school system is huge. And I think that, I think just the public schools, there's probably like 22 to 25 high schools. At least, yeah. It's an unwieldy thing to manage, man. Yeah.
All right, guys, we are back at it. I know everyone's time is valuable here this afternoon. We've all got meetings and upon meetings, so we're going to go a little bit out of order here. I know Chairwoman Houston is on her way, but what I'd like to do is we've got a couple folks signed up to talk in favor of the legislation who may have a presentation. Would the one, is it Alex? Yes, yeah, do you have a PowerPoint you want to? Awesome. Why don't you come on up? I think you are good to go. In my understanding, Alex, you served in the you served us in the Marines. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you can. We've got the mic on at the podium there, so you can stand right there. Oh, you got a clicker.
We'll go this way.
Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Alex Carney. I'm a former Special Operations Officer in the Marine Corps. So the topic of this bill, or the content of this bill, is, I guess, kind of near and dear to my heart because I've spent a lot of long days and long nights using maps to push people around under stress, ma'am.
Alex, I may suspend you just for a second. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. My grandchildren were here paging, and I talked with your wife.
Demanded your picture.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we are at ease until you catch your breath.
Well, thank y'all so much for waiting. Y'all might have, huh?
You want a water?
No, that's okay. It won't take long. Y'all probably saved lots of Georgia children's lives. I don't know how much y'all heard about this bill, but one of the plans of this.
I got it.
The real purpose of this bill is to get accurate maps of schools and get them not only accurate, but to get them in the hands of people public safety people. And it's a list of people like the police, the sheriff, emergency management, fire departments, EMS, SWAT teams, to make sure they have accurate maps. And you'll notice a lot of times when architects do their map of the school, it just looks real pretty and it doesn't show anything around it. Well, these maps will be all unified. Everything will be pointed north because that's the way people with police and safety patrols and everybody look at maps. Everything is pointed the same direction north. And this overlay will also show the roads that surround the schools, so in case you have an ambulance that comes up, so they'll know where to go. Not just the floor print of the school, but you'll have overlay of all the exits and all the roads leading to the school. And one thing that this does also, it puts it has a grid overlay. So you might call and say lunchroom, the lunchroom's in LC, like you were looking up a map, and you could go to LC and be able to find where that place was in case of an emergency. And this is to be used, when you have a public safety emergency, and we've got to be prepared. And one thing you'll notice in this bill, that we want it both digital and so you can print it. Because a lot of times when you have a lot of people in an agency that are responding to a crisis, they'll gather around a table with a big map, and you can, instead of everybody looking at their cell phones, this map will go to the cell phones of public safety people. It'll be an app that they can go to it, but it also has to be printed too. And this does not require the public safety agencies to have any other special computer laptop information. It's to fit their own, what am I trying to say? The equipment that they have, software. That was the SAT word I couldn't think of. And their own software. And if you notice why we have so many rules, it's so that we want everything to be uniform. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your presentation. We've got a couple questions. I'll go to my right, number 24. I believe that's Chairman Irwin.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairwoman Houston, thank you very much for this bill, for thinking safety for our children, and communicating this with us today. Let me ask you, I think I have two questions for you,
Okay.
if that is okay. One of them is going to be this program right here. You said it works with the first responders, so they're able to connect and know what the inside of the school looks like. They can maneuver through the school with this technology, meaning that if they're trying to find the media center in the school and they've never been there, this will help them easily locate the media center, the cafeteria, or wherever they're being directed to. Is that correct?
Correct. And one other thing I forgot to mention too, there has to be a walkthrough with the schools when they're doing this map, because sometimes you might, have a hallway that shows up on the map. And maybe they're using that for art room now. They might change the purpose. Over the years, they changed the purpose.
Gotcha.
And another thing too, it will, I don't know if it's in here, but they need to walk through it every year to make sure everything stayed the same. Because you know how, I was on the school board a long time, and a lot of times they change different purposes for buildings. So if we change it once a year, if we walk through and make everything still the same, it would be good, because sometimes, you have study hall in this building and call them different things.
Gotcha. Follow up if I can, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
mean to interrupt the chairman.
No, thank you, though. Question here, too, is in this bill, how do you see this being funded? How does this get in the hands of our educators and our local systems?
Well, I see us appropriating some money, and I think some agencies might have some money, and I think you could use some of your school safety money for this. A lot of different vendors. We're not pushing any certain vendor. Gwinnett County already has this, and I'm not sure what other counties already have it too. But there, the other people that do it. It's not real high tech. It's just somebody that thought of this, and this is the kind of thing they use over in Kuwait or something, where they were going in on places. So it's not anything real complicated. It's just doing it and doing it right and have it compatible with the other software. Because the worst thing we can do is to do something like this and then require all the police and all the agencies to have to change their software. Then they aren't going to do it. And to make it easy enough on them, because we don't want them to have to go buy some new software. We want, this law says that it has to be compatible with the software of the public agencies.
Okay.
But I don't think it's not as expensive as you would think. I think Gwinnett County. We can look up. I'll look up exactly what it costs. Of course, Gwinnett County costs a lot more than it's going to cost in Eccles County. So, a number of schools when you just have
quite
two.
a few. I think, did I hear the number 7 systems are currently using this in the state or somewhere? And I know Gwinnett's the largest.
Gwinnett's the largest, and Gwinnett has I don't know how many police departments. I mean, with all the towns they've got in Gwinnett, they've probably got a lot of police departments and another thing I forgot to mention, 911, it would be connected to that. And also, this is private information. It is not to be distributed to the public. And I think someplace in the bill, it tells us it's not subject to public disclosure.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Number 26 to my right, your left.
Okay, Madam Chair, thanks. Thank you for this bill. I got to read over it a little this morning and talk to a few people about it. And as a former school person, I think it kind of spot on about safety. One question I had, didn't know if you thought about this, and I should have tried to catch you during session this morning and ask you about it,
crazy.
so I apologize.
No problem.
Time-wise, it could be tough, especially for your smaller systems or really larger systems, to get this implemented by July 1. It's something you consider if would it be appropriate if it could be at a later time to give them time to implement the plan. If we decide to do this and it passes both houses, the governor signs it, can we? If you thought about a timeline where it'd be appropriate amount of time to implement it.
I haven't. It depends on when the governor signs it. I don't know how long it would really take.
Yeah, I would admit, Chairman Irwin, you were superintendent longer than I was, but I would think anywhere from end of December to really starting next year, not July 1 this year, but the following year. At the earliest, I would say January 1, but that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I'd like for it to. I mean, if this bill passes, I think we need to let it go as fast as we can get it. So I would hate to have something like this sitting around and not taking advantage of it, and something happened
I understand.
that we couldn't go. Is there any wording we say as soon as possible? I don't know. I'd like for it to be. I don't want to stretch a year. I think a year is too long because the way things are in this town. And I hope sometimes it's not just when we have an active shooter, but a lot of times you've got kids that have seizures and lots of other things that can take effect that you would need to get an ambulance in there for a child in a hurry or a teacher and not knowing where to go. And I think one of the things in some of these schools where they've had things, the people arrive and they don't know where to go. There's just no direction. And I was surprised to look at, the architect plan, the plans they have look real pretty, but there's no grid overlay to really tell you how to get there. And they're all twisted around, and this makes everybody do their map the same way. And I think that's a standard now. I'm not too much on public safety, but I think it's a standard that you have everything north, I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a policeman. But some of you might know. But I don't know when that's for the committee to decide when you'd like for it to go into effect. We can always amend it.
Okay. Yeah, I would think it'd be hard pressed for many systems to pull it off by July 1.
Well,
so.
I don't think this says when it has to go into effect, does it?
I think if it's not listed, is it July 1 automatically?
Because the law, you have to
Yeah.
do these things if you put this in your school, it has to be done, this way. But it becomes law, but I don't think it doesn't tell you when you have to do it, does it?
I'd have to ask the author. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, you're
I don't think I didn't think it did.
It doesn't have it.
You're good.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
thought-
Chairman. The author, the intent, I would assume, would be to move as quickly as they
As
could,
quick-
knowing that some systems would have the staff, the ability to move faster than other systems.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that's the intent and you state that, then.
Well, I don't see how much, I guess if, I have small school systems in my thing, maybe we've got 3 schools in my county. and I don't think it would, 2 of them are new. All of them are relatively new. You could get plans, but the plans probably aren't accurate, and you've got to, everybody in the school has a safety person, I would think now, to walk through the schools. But I think the larger schools, it would take longer.
Yeah.
But I think if something happened and you didn't implement it, you should be real sorry.
I agree.
Legislative Council, I've hit your button. I didn't know if you wanted to weigh in on this.
Yeah, if the committee was interested in entertaining any amendment language, what I might recommend would be at line 46, after emergency management agencies, excuse me, that you would insert as soon as practicable, but not later than, and then at whatever date the committee would want to insert there, so that it is.
That's fine with me.
The start of XYZ school
If
year.
you want to say July 1, 2024, or whatever deadline you
Or
want.
December
that you could-
31st,
January 1st.
or January 1st, yeah.
Don't you think that would be 6 months to do it?
Again, up to the office.
Legislative Council, I'm seeing some nodding heads. If you go ahead and work up some language for us, that would be great. We got a couple more questions on the board. I'm going to go to number 22 here, to my right.
Love this bill. I'd like to see a deadline put on it, not just maybe a start, but a finish by a time frame at which this needs to be completed. And I don't know if that's
Yeah, I
the
think
question, which he was talking, but in your language to Legislative Council, that was start by this date or be completed by this date?
Mr. Chairman, it would be completed. So the provision there is that the public schools and school systems would cooperate with local law enforcement agencies and make sure and provide the detailed and accurate school building plans as soon as practicable, but not later than. So they would have to have the plans in place by the deadline that the committee
Well,
sets.
would see, they will have plans, but the company that takes its own will revise the plans, because the plans, most schools don't have accurate plans, because they've added on, or I know you're always building something, always changing something, and they will do walkthroughs. The company that puts us in will walk through the school to make sure it's right. They have some responsibilities in the contract that they will make sure that's done right.
Well, is there a rough estimate of what each school is going to cost to do this?
I think each school, I'm sure it'd be the larger schools. I think in mine, they told me it would cost each one of my schools about $3,500 a school. And then if you add on to the school, maybe you had an addition to the school, and that to revise it, it would cost $500 when you add it on to revise the plan, which I mean, and all the money we spend around here, that doesn't sound like a whole bunch to me. I don't know about y'all, but I would think it, and that was my school system. But I'm sure some school systems, when they're larger, they might, I don't know. I'm sure you put it out for bids to other companies that do this, but we want the company that do this to do these things, to have it compatible with public safety, and have it printable and digital, and have an app on your phone. We want these things in it, no matter when the RFP goes out, that they do this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to go, got about 10 minutes left, so let's try to keep these super quick questions. To my right, Floor Leader Wade with a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chair Lady, for bringing the bill. I like the concept. I like the focus on school safety and trying to ensure that everybody's, as we like to say in my church, singing from the same songbook. Couple questions, line 59 through 60. I want to make sure I understand what I'm reading here. Public schools and school systems shall not be required to purchase or integrate additional software platforms or applications to view crisis response mapping data. Understand that. If I'm a school system, I have existing software. Mm-hmm. If that software is not able to be utilized to meet the intent of this legislation, will I not thereby be required I mean, to be able to view crisis response mapping data. So I've been around technology long enough to know that it's going to change, and it's going to change frequently. And software applications can have updates, et cetera. I'm not questioning the intent. I think I know what I'm reading there, but I'm a little bit worried as to if I have software that I can look and view my maps, but that software can't speak to GMA, and it can't speak to a vendor or a provider because I'm a school system that's information is still on DOS and it's 15 years old. This looks like it's not going to require the school system to do anything. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that, so Legislative Council can clarify. I just want to make sure we're saying that they don't have to do something, but we're still saying they're required to have mapping data. And I'm just a little bit worried that that might put a school system in a spot to say.
Could I let somebody else answer that question? Because it's my understanding they adapt they adapt to what the school says. Could you answer that question?
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to walk to the podium, that'd be great. Your mic's not going to be on.
Can you restate the question one more time? I apologize.
So I just want to make sure that,
Yes,
so in this law, it's proposed bill is saying that school systems shall not be required to purchase or integrate additional software. That's great if the current software they have is compatible with applications through these other agencies or the vendor. But generally, with the rate of change in technology, your company and other companies are going to have systems that are going to need to be integrated. And so if I'm a school system that's sitting on something that's 10 years old and it's sufficient to give me local maps for my local police department, this isn't going to require me to make any changes if it allows me to say, no, I don't have to buy additional and I don't have to integrate with a system that doesn't currently work with my system.
Yes, sir. So, I guess what we'd be trying to prevent is, school district A bought this panic button or this camera management system. School district B bought this system and that system. What we want to prevent is people having to go out and buy whole new systems, because people have already made, both on the school side but also in public safety, investments in the software that they have. So any vendor that would be, providing mapping as part of this should be able to work with the software they've already purchased. So we're preventing essentially a double requirement, either new software for the schools or new software for public safety. So that's the goal, is whatever mapping data gets created, it has to be compatible with what the school already has, to prevent them from having to buy something totally new and having to make two purchases, I guess.
Okay, so to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here,
Yep.
my child is 6 and he's really good at technology. And he has an iPad that I got in 2012, one of the first, I guess. You know how many apps that he can download on that? It's really great as a parent because that's my default control feature for him not to go and charge my credit card, because nothing is applicable to that version. So I'm just a little bit concerned that there's going to be some dissonance between what the intent is, which I think is very valid, and the school systems being able to say, our system doesn't speak with this, and so we're just not going to do anything.
Well, my contention with having this is not to make the school, somebody come in and say, we can't do this, because somebody can do it right now. Now, I can't say what's going to happen 10 years from now.
I understand.
I mean, we might be forever and ever. I don't know if we could word it differently, whether we have in years, 10 years, if the thing,
Right.
But you'll probably be here in 10 years, so you can go back and change it.
I appreciate the ladies.
You'll probably be here, and
So-
I have. You can change the law.
And my only other opinion I wanted to share with the committee, I think I get the intent. I do think that it would make sense personally, as a person that has looked at school boards, to have a not later than June 30 of 2024, just to allow these kinds of nuanced situations to be addressed.
Well, I was on the school board for 10 years before I came up here.
Yes, ma'am.
And as long as you put it off, people just wait and wait to do things. The sooner you have a dedeadline, you go and do it.
I hear what the gentlelady says, and I
But
respect
it's just
it greatly.
y'all, it's y'all, you know, that's y'all's decision.
Yes, ma'am.
But my conscience is clear. I know what I want.
Yes, ma'am. I hear you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Leader. What we'll do, I know we're close to the top of the hour here, so we're going to, and I want to give us plenty of time to vet the bill, so we're going to have a couple more questions. And then at the chair's discretion, we may have a subsequent meeting on this to bring this back up and vote on it. But let's continue to flush it out. And I want to have a couple minutes to hear from you as well. So with that, Representative Wilkerson, I know you've been lit up for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill. I do have, I guess, a couple of questions, and I'll make them real quick. One is, we're going to put timing in there because Cobb County has 112 schools, so it probably take a while, and I do like the later date. But then two, we may want to consider putting in there a time period if there's changes in the school. So you have a splost addition that you have, say, 60 days or 90 days, whatever that is, upon additions. That may be something to think about. But those are my big questions at this point, though.
Well, that's a good point. So when you build a new school system, you have so long to.
If you have addition,
Yeah.
or an addition to the school.
Great. Thank you. Great question. To my
Good-
right, your
good point.
left, number 28.
Thank you, Chairman.
A little choked
So-
up.
Yep, a little bit. Thank you. So what I wanted to ask you was, how many have you already mapped? How many schools have you already done? And have you had any problems so far?
In Georgia, ma'am, we've mapped Gwinnett, Hall County, Habersham, White County, and we're currently mapping Savannah Chatham on the secondary and elementary school level.
So that would be about how many schools?
Probably around between 400 and 500, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Right now.
Okay.
Maybe a little less.
And have you had any problems so far?
Well, I think there's a few educators in this room, and they understand the complication of making sure school floor plans look accurate because schools change year to year. So it does take someone to go into the school itself and look at a hallway and identify that as the athletic hall, because it might never have been on an architectural plan, and it may not even be on a sign on the wall. So that's the complicated portion of it, but it's nothing that's insurmountable at all.
Thank you, Chairman.
And one thing too, a lot of times they'll say the kindergarten section, and you've got to have, and the school might all call it kindergarten section, but it might be building A, or building B, or building C. You've got to know what to tell them to go to, not the kindergarten section, to go to building A. But I don't know how you figure that out. That's beyond me, because in a panic you're going to say something. First thing you think about is going to say the kindergarten section. Maybe you need it listed twice. I don't know.
Good discussion. I'm going to go again to my right, number 29. You got it?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. How long did it take you guys to map Gwinnett as it being one of the largest school systems in the state? I'm just curious on when we're talking about timeline, what did that look like when y'all did it?
I would say the first schools got done at the 2-month mark, and I'd say we were probably done completely and implemented in the public safety community by 6 months. So, and some schools are either easier than others, to be honest.
All right, thank you.
Great. Love hearing Gwinnett. My home county's got it covered. Leading the way. Number 22.
So my guesstimate is there's roughly over 2,000 schools in the state. Does that sound about right? Over 2,000 schools in the state? 2,200, something like that? 20. Okay, so let's call it 25.
Pretty close.
Call it 2,500. You've done about 400. Being able to execute this with lead times and turnaround and all of that, you're down to 2,100 schools. So 2,100 schools takes, how long does it take to do a school?
Well, some schools are different sizes.
Right.
Like, they don't have that many students.
I just don't want to put a deadline that's unreasonable that can't be done, and then everything's at a premium.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the July 2024 deadline that was previously brought up is a fair deadline. I think that builds in enough time for both a vendor and the school district, I think. But
Worst case is you finish it out the end of the year of
Yeah.
2024, so you have till the end of the year to give them. That's up to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. With that, why don't we turn it over to Alex? You're already at the podium there. If you want to run through your presentation, we've got the room for another couple minutes, so give us the quick and dirty.
Okay, so I think everybody gets the general gist of this, but this bill solves a very specific problem in school safety, which is a lack of accurate usable maps that are disseminated to the public safety community. So if you look at Uvalde, anything from Uvalde to Sandy Hook to Columbine, all issues with floor plans, both the accuracy of the floor plans and the accessibility to public safety. What school districts traditionally had, and there's educators in the room that'll sympathize with this, is a text-based emergency action plan sitting probably in a 3-ring binder behind them at their office. Buried in that somewhere is a very inaccurate, often, floor plan that no one in the public safety community has access to. So my background coming out of the special operations community, we have a very specific way we map new places because we're always operating in unfamiliar locations. So we applied that kind of concept to kind of bring out what best practices would be when it comes to how to map a school for school safety. That's your typical suburbia elementary school right there, single story. If anybody can see that star there, that's the media center in this school, and everybody here who's been an educator can sympathize with the challenge a school resource officer might have at that star, just trying to communicate his or her position to someone who'd never been in that school before if they're linking up. What we don't have before we go on operations overseas, but what you can eventually get to back here, is a floor plan that looks something like that. So the issue with an architectural drawing like that is twofold. On one hand, if you look at that right now, that thing is very difficult to communicate and navigate and plan off of. It's also inaccurate. The other piece of this is that no one in this county actually had access to this map other than the local police department. So it didn't serve as a unifying map or a single sheet of music, as was referred to earlier, to unify all those people. So what we found to be best practice, just based off looking at a lot of after-action reports and spending a lot of time using maps, is when you orient a map north, everybody can communicate using an objective cardinal direction. You overlay the floor plans on top of the structure. You do a walkthrough of the building to confirm that how a room is labeled or how that building is labeled actually matches what's on the maps. You want to capture accurate safety features in the building like AEDs and trauma kits and key utilities and things like that. You're also trying to capture how people who work in this school every day naturally communicate about position. So in your high school, you probably had hallways or regions that were named after local language. Maybe it's the red hallway or the middle school wing or the athletic hall. These things aren't always on a sign on a wall, and they're definitely not on the architectural drawing. But that's how someone under stress at that position is going to refer to their location if they're making a 911 call or a radio call from the building. And I know this is I know that map is pretty far away. But if I told you all, you don't have any sophisticated military training, if I told you to park your ambulance here on the northeast side of the building, because north is up, and park in grid square H2, so I went across the letter H down to the letter 2, and I told you to enter through door C, which is right here, which is the door I propped open, and meet me at the intersection of the orange and the purple hallway, you could probably follow what I'm talking about. You may or may not have been to this elementary school before. So that's what mapping like this is supposed to accomplish, make it really easy for people under stress to talk about big tactical nightmare buildings like an elementary school. I'd kind of close out by saying that what this bill does a good job of is making a pretty accurate map is one thing, but if people in the public safety community don't have access to it, then it's useless. So anybody who's making maps for school has to make sure that those maps get disseminated both to local first responders, county level first responders, state level first responders, and sometimes federal level first responders. And that requires being able to make a map in different file types so it works in software systems that are already out there in the public safety community. So that's, I guess the highlights are in text up there of the bill, but at the end of the day, what this bill creates is a standard for mapping of schools across the state of Georgia, not only in the accuracy and what data is identified in the map, but it also sets a standard or best practice for making sure those maps are actually accessible by the public safety community that serves that specific school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. You have a question to my right, number 23.
Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it again, and I totally agree with the intent of the bill. My question is have you guys met with GMA? Have you talked with them? Have they provided any insight into the language? And then in order to strengthen the bill, it may be something that we clarify that if this were to become law, that, school systems would be able to utilize, obviously, local SPLOST dollars, local dollars, or even state security grants, school safety and security grants. I don't know if that's needs to be clarified. I just want to make sure the bill sponsors thought that through.
Well, I think GMA is aware that we're presenting this bill.
Okay.
And have to my knowledge, they have no objection.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
That's correct.
Thank you. You got two other questions. Number 28 to my right.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, how have other schools funded this project?
That's a very good question. It's a combination of different funding streams. Some schools, I think Savannah Chatham, who we're just most recently working with, used a combination of safety grant funds, but also I think they used some of the ESSER COVID funding as well. Some people use federal grants, like I think when Gwinnett originally contracted with us, they used federal funds that came out of a grant program for school safety. Hall County, Habersham, White, they may have funded it through their own general allotment. So it ends up being a mix sometimes, to answer your question.
Great, thank you. Number 26 to my right.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Question, the mapping we've got here, the requirements, it would benefit the schools and the community, of course, the kids, but it wouldn't benefit a certain contractor, correct? Like you or one of your competitors. It was basically just kind of even playing field for everybody, and the school system pick who they want, or they can decide if they want to do it themselves.
That's correct, sir. So if you look at the map up there on the wall, that is not that complicated. So it doesn't require any nifty gadgets or super technology. That is overhead imagery that you could potentially pull off Google Maps with the floor plans that you could probably cut out using Microsoft PowerPoint with a gridded overlay on top. So there's nothing overly, there's nothing proprietary or, minimizing about someone being able to produce that. Anybody from a really ambitious IT guy to, to even public safety with a mapping background to a private vendor could produce something that looks like that, sir.
Perfect.
That meets the requirements. Yeah.
Okay.
But he would still have to go by these requirements.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Huh?
Great, thank you, Mr. Carney. With that, I'm going to welcome to the podium my former chief of police, Gwinnett County, Mr. Butch Ayers, to testify to the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Butch Ayers. I'm the executive director for the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police. And like the chairman said, I spent 35 years with the Gwinnett County Police Department. I was the SWAT team commander at the time of Columbine, SWAT team commander in Gwinnett, so we learned a lot of lessons from that particular response. And we started looking at school safety plans, and one of the things we did in the late 90s and early 2000s is we went and looked for plans, and what we found is exactly what we talked about earlier. There were paper plans, architectural plans. Basically, it was better than nothing, but we had a lot of work to do. And how did we keep that? We kept that in 3-ring binders, which was kind of hard to put on your belt. Maybe you had it in your police car if you were lucky, but it's certainly in the command post and in the principal's office, et cetera, et cetera. And what we found is that responding to an incident or any type of thing at a school, and these campuses, especially in Gwinnett County, are huge, that there are probably 22 different high schools in Gwinnett County alone. but where do you go? You know, you have to have a common operating platform to send everybody. You know, telling somebody to respond to the back door next to the gym right across from the dumpsters near the student parking lot, there's a lot that can be lost in that translation. But having some type of common operating platform mapping system that's easy for anybody to use, in addition, is it needs to be in the hands of your first responders. And if you have a school situation, it isn't going to be just the local agency. It's like you talked about in Gwinnett. You have the Gwinnett County Police Department, Gwinnett County Sheriff's Department, you have local GSP, you've got at least 9 cities that have their own police departments, and you may even have help coming from other agencies as well, fire department, EMS, et cetera. But having a common platform to be able to respond effectively in any type of critical incident situation, the decisions and actions taken within the first 15 minutes are going to actually decide the outcome of that particular incident. So if we're wasting a lot of time trying to get people stationed in a particular position here or there because of some miscommunication, and we're not all on the same sheet of music, that could be detrimental to the safety of our kids. And with that, I will. That's my presentation. Be glad to answer any questions.
Great. Looks like you've got a question down front, number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess one question, you had mentioned the local police department. So it talks about being compatible with the software that they use. So, for example, in Cobb, we have Austell, we have Powder Springs, we have et cetera. Does each police station have their own software they use, and would the school system be required to have different software for each of those? Do you know? What are they doing, Gwinnett?
Well, in fairness, I retired at the end of 2019, so and this came on since my time since I retired. But typically, the companies work and they'll do interface with a particular vendor or a particular system. But I do know it is available to all law enforcement in Gwinnett County. As far as the actual specifics, I would refer you back to either somebody in the school system or the vendor.
Okay, yeah. Just again, to follow up on Chairman Ways, I'm sorry. Point is, we don't mandate that they buy any software, but if we have multiple softwares that are not compatible, that's my only concern, is putting that cost on the school system.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? I'm hearing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else to speak to the bill? All right. Well, with that, as I mentioned, we'll do a hearing only right now, but good discussion, and look forward to bringing this back and getting it moving here pretty quick as we move to a crossover. So thank you
for waiting on me. I'm sorry.
Penny, we'll wait for you anytime. All right, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you to those in attendance. Meeting is adjourned.